Strap in for some uncomfortable truths about racism, particularly in maternity services, but healthcare in general. And we have to call it for what it is. It is racism, and the only way that we can make things better for black and brown global majority ethnicity populations is to be able to say this is racism, and we are going to work to find the solutions to do the unlearning and unpick everything so that we make things better for all the future generations that are coming through. I'm going to give you 3 specific examples of maternity services that if you have been in maternity care for more than 5 years, you will have heard these at some point within your careers. You may have fed it down to other students or other midwives. You as an institution have contributed to the harm and the poorer outcomes. And yes, I want to acknowledge it sits very uncomfortably. We cannot change the past, but what we can do is recognise the harms that have occurred and change things moving forward. We can be the ones who are curious about things and become anti-racists. Now, I am not the expert in this area. I want to direct you to 5 times more. Black Mothers Matter. I want to direct you to places like Tommy's, for example, and individuals like Ilian Morrison and also Mamadina, who are fantastic people in this area. And I want to acknowledge and thank Embrace for all of their work that they have been doing, looking at ethnicity data on outcomes for mothers and babies over the last 10 years, which has really highlighted those disparities and enabled us to go, look, there's a problem, there's an issue here, what can we do to address it? So go and listen to a lot of those campaign groups and those individuals, and it's something that I have been learning a lot from. I was at a fantastic conference last week where Black Mothers Matter were there, and their one phrase stuck with me: when care improves for black and brown women, it improves for everybody. If you take nothing else in this video, black and brown voices need to be heard, they need to be listened to, and they need to be acted on, whatever it is that they're saying. Now, these 3 examples are examples of institutional racism. This is where something has been passed down from one generation to another generation to another generation of healthcare professional that has then impacted on the care and experience of black and brown and global majority ethnicity populations. Myth number 1 is that black people have a different shaped pelvis to white women. So 2009, less than 2 decades ago, I was taught that black women had different shaped pelvises and that often their babies would remain high in the pelvis and then shoot down in that pushing stage of labour right at the end. Now, this came from some physicians and anthropologists in the late 1800s and early 1900s who were incredibly racist, who said that black women had different shaped pelvises which impacted on the ability to give birth. There's literally next to no research or evidence for this, and everyone has different shaped pelvises and sizes. It's only something that's been debunked in the last 5 to 10 years in maternity services. You may be asking me, well, why does this cause harm to black people in particular? Well, actually, if baby remains high up, we have to question as healthcare professionals, why is this baby remaining high? What's stopping this baby from coming down the pelvis and engaging properly within that pelvis? Could it be a sign of obstructed labour? Do we need to consider alternative birth methods like a caesarean birth, for example, to keep both mum and baby safe? Now, instead, if we think that babies need to remain high in the pelvis and we think that this is just normal for them, it's going to increase the chance of prolonged labour, missing obstructed labour, increased fetal distress, increases the chance of things like second stage, pushing stage, caesarean births, which in itself has risks and higher risks associated to it than any other stage of labour. If it's not detected in time, it can have really dire consequences for both mothers and babies. And had people who are working in healthcare been curious 2, 3, 4 generations ago to go, how on earth does the colour of someone's skin impact on the shape and size of a pelvis? Maybe this wouldn't have been passed down from generation to generation, therefore contributing to institutional racism. The second example is labetalol. So labetalol is the first line blood pressure medication if you develop high blood pressure during your pregnancy that is prescribed and administered to people to bring their blood pressure down if you are not asthmatic. However, it has been passed down from generation of healthcare person to generation of healthcare person that labetalol does not work effectively on black-skinned women. Now, there is some small amounts of evidence that highlights that labetalol doesn't always bring down the bottom number of the blood pressure, the diastolic number, as well as what nifedipine does for people who are black. However, the most recent trials, and there is a big, large, ongoing randomised control trial at the moment here in the UK looking at exactly this, labetalol versus nifedipine, and looking at ethnicity specifically, there is still next to no research on this, and it shouldn't be something that is ruled out just based on the colouring of your skin. And if an obstetrician jumps straight to nifedipine and not even considers labetalol, not only is that reducing the amount of medication that that person can have potentially, it's also potentially meaning increased side effects as well. Both labetalol and nifedipine have side effects, but some people really struggle with the headaches on nifedipine, for example. as well as some other side effects too. And what you've done is you've limited the options for that individual that can help treat the blood pressure, just because you have been passed down from generation to generation that one particular medication does not work on a particular skin type. And the amount of melanin in a person's skin should not impact on the treatment that is provided to them. And the final example I'm going to give, I'm aware that there are so many more, but jaundice for babies. We, as midwives, did discharge talks, chats, would educate parents on looking out for the signs of jaundice based on white babies and looking at their skin colour turning yellow from head to toe. Now, in a white or pink baby, it's quite easy to see that jaundice happening firsthand. In a black or brown baby, it's a lot more challenging. There have been educational campaigns for the last 5 years, really re-educating midwives and maternity support workers and paediatricians, neonatologists, for example, and even now infographics that are given so that people can detect the signs of jaundice in their babies much earlier. It's harder to detect yellowing of skin colour, but what we're looking out for is yellowing of the eyes, yellowing of the gums, lethargy, so not waking for feeds, for example, pale stools, yellowing of the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands, and blanching of the skin as well. You may ask how this has led to harm. Well, if we don't detect jaundice early enough, it means that the babies are more likely to need admission into a hospital, more likely to be separated and entered into a neonatal intensive care unit, more likely to need double or triple phototherapy, more likely need to do a total blood transfusion. And in the worst case scenarios, if it is not detected in time, it leads to the unalivement of the baby, which is increased mortality in general for these babies. It is the lack of curiosity of healthcare professionals over the generations that have contributed to institutional racism, and that sits very uncomfortably that you have been part of that, because that has been passed down from person to person over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7+ decades. It's the lack of questioning and breaking the mould and asking, okay, we might have always done things this way, but actually, is this the right way of doing things? Is there a better way? What's the evidence and research behind whatever this is? Have we listened to our service users, and have we listened to people from black and brown communities? I've focused on the negatives, but I want to give some reassurance that things are changing, and thanks to calling it racism, thanks to all of the campaign groups, we have halved the maternal mortality in black women through addressing racism in healthcare. At every single level, at university level, at healthcare level, there have been educational campaigns to completely get rid of all of the myths that have previously existed. There have been initiatives in lots of different areas providing dedicated antenatal support in addressing the inequalities, particularly relating to things like language barriers, for example. There have been targeted campaigns to improve accessibility and trust in healthcare services locally, so that black and brown women feel more able to be able to access those healthcare services and be able to have those trusting relationships and know that they're going to be listened to. There have been national educational programmes, things like jaundice and the signs and symptoms, both for midwives, maternity support workers, paediatricians, neonatologists, for everybody, including families too, so that both mum, dad, partner, whoever it is, can pick up the signs of jaundice early and really advocate for that treatment and that testing. There are still disparities in outcomes across the country, but if you yourself are black or brown, ask your community midwife or your local maternity services, what are they doing to help address the institutional racism? What are they doing to make care safer for black and brown women in your area? And hopefully there will be something going on that they'll be able to talk to you about or signpost you to the local resources. It gives me hope that things are changing for the better. We've got so much more work to do, and it really needs to improve at a much faster pace than what has been happening so far. And there are some phenomenally inspiring people within this space to go and listen to and go and hear their voices.